Please welcome to the stage Jamie Summers and Matt Oak from the Skills Farm.
Thank you. To kick this off, could I just get a show of hands? Who in the audience believes that retaining your millennial workforce is going to be more of a challenge than any other generation that you've got in your workforce? Can I have a show of hands? From what you've heard today and from your own experiences, who believes? Show me again. So that's about 60, I'd say about 60, 70% of you. So that's kind of what our clients tell us. And we've heard a lot today about technology, about external communication and internal communication, as well as some really inspiring talks around what talent, rich talent's available within the upcoming generations that we've got in front of us. What we're going to teach you today is how to make that challenge a little bit easier. So we're going to show you some ideas that will be easy to understand. And one of the things we say at the Skills Farm is that quite often the simplest idea is the most effective. So what we're going to share with you isn't going to be rocket science, and it's going to be something, if we've done our job properly, that you can, on Monday morning, go back to your organisations and back to your businesses and implement, that are going to show you a very quick return on investment, but also be very easy if you're managing teams or you have teams that manage teams, are going to be easy to follow. But before we go into all that, let me start by introducing ourselves. So my name's Jamie Summers. I'm the co-founder of the Skills Farm, and we've been running for about 6 years now. I graduated at the Master Trainer Institute over in Geneva. I'm going to draw on my experience of training Deloitte employees. So what I'm going to be sharing with you is, over the past 3 years, we've been involved in training, I'd say roughly, just over 1,000 of the Deloitte employees in central London. And that's on 3 programs. So you have their apprenticeship program, you have their key manager skill program, and also their female leadership program. So that's where the basis of my ideas that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So that's a little bit about me. I was going to come with my business partner and my husband, Scott, but I thought what a much more powerful message for us to get across to you is to bring our very own latest millennial employee, who I'll let introduce himself now.
Thanks, Jamie. My name is Matt, and I'm an experienced instructional designer, and I lead the Managing Millennials program here at the Skills Farm. Prior to that, I used to work at Apple as a global instructional designer, so I focused specifically on rewriting the onboarding curriculum for all Apple retail employees across the world. And we focused also on projects to change things like processes and systems, but more importantly, employee engagement. So, that's a little bit about us. I just want to show if you can show some hands very quickly. Who's heard the first one there? Millennials are lazy. Yeah? Okay, pretty much most of the room. I've heard that too, being a millennial. It's not that we're lazy, it's that we need goals that are compelling, and a vision that's got purpose behind it, and values that speak to the ones that we've got. If those 3 things are evident across the board, then we'll do pretty much whatever it takes to get the job done. So they're not lazy at all. What about the next one? Millennials are entitled. Who's heard that before? Yep, most of the room. Me again as well. 68% of hiring managers will say that millennials possess skills that no other generation has. So if you're thinking, well, this new starter can prove their worth over a certain period of time, and then maybe we'll let them see if they're able to have this next opportunity or make the leap into whatever it is that they want to be doing, then your competitors are going to come along and they're going to take that skill. They're going to take that employee because they're really good at that thing. So please don't make us wait for doing something just because that's the way it's always been. Millennials are not loyal. Have you heard that one before? Yeah, some nods of heads. I've heard that. I know that we're very conscious of not job hopping, but it is something that happens. Think about the world that we've grown up in as millennials. So we've been shaped by financial crashes and terrorist attacks and globalization and a rapid rise of technology. So we know about living in an unstable world, So we want to do whatever it takes to make sure that our future is secure. And that may mean that if we're not feeling very utilized in our roles, that we're just going to hop onto Google and we'll see if there's somebody else that's offering a similar job or something that's the same, and we can go ahead and apply for it. And that doesn't matter now if that's the other side of the world. That's exactly what I did when I started at Apple. That's a global role. I was based in the US, but I obviously lived in the UK, but I went for it anyway. What about the last one there? Millennials are the worst generation ever. Anyone heard that? No? Okay. It's been mentioned to me a couple of times before. Just to explore that statement a little bit, the millennial generation as a whole, it's the single largest generation ever that are approaching their peak when it comes to not only their professional lives, but also their consumer lives as well. And they, as I've just mentioned, they possess skills that no other generation has. So are they really the worst generation ever and such a pain, or is it more that there's just a misunderstanding going on? I think it's the latter. So what I'd like to do is we've looked at some myths and some things that are generally what millennials get called, and I'd like to move on now to ways to motivate them. So in 2015, the Center for Generational Kinetics polled over 200,000 employees, and they found some common traits. So the first one would be that they desire leaders and colleagues that they actually like. And this has been mentioned earlier on today, and it's something that very much speaks to me. I left my previous role to join the Skills Farm. It wasn't Apple, by the way. I had a job in between. And that was solely down to the fact that I did not get along with my management. They didn't care about me. As much as the vision of the company said otherwise, I was told, I don't want to know about what you do at the weekend. You're just here to work. So please do the opposite if you're taking anything away from today. We want a vision that we believe in. So the vision of the company is something that I would look at before I'm even considering applying for a role. So if that's not inherent in your day-to-day operation of the company as well, then I would look to change that straight away. Jamie's going to talk a little bit later on about our first meeting, but the conversation went very much along the lines of what is your vision as a company, and does that speak to me? Do I want to work for this company? Next thing would be compensation and benefits. So with 10,000 college graduates or college pupils, 61% of them said that they wanted to leave education and go straight into running their own company. So think about your compensation and the benefits that you're offering for those that are even considering working for your company. Is that really desirable to me? Is it going to light my fire, and is it going to make me want to work for you instead of running my own company? If not, let's rethink that. And a sense of belonging. So enable our productivity. Please don't constrict it. Gallup's 2016 study notes that just 29% of millennials at work actually feel engaged. And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on. And the final thing is challenging work that encourages growth. So in some of my previous roles, I was given a very much a one-size-fits-all developmental model, and it's easy to implement, but it's got its restrictions. So I implore you, please spend some time getting to know your employees and write a developmental model that will work for them as people. And then you'll find out by getting to know them, and the videos earlier showed this, that they might have a skill in a different area that you didn't even realize, and maybe you could move them into something that's more relevant within your company, and they can apply the skills there. So, I'm going to share with you some insights from Apple. Why Apple? Because I spent 5 years there, I was based in the UK and the US, and I worked with a global team. So 3 things that they're doing really, really well that you can think about employing in your company. So, internal programs that are win-win. What this looks like is it's an internal job availability, but it's for, say, 6, 9, or 12 months. The costing doesn't change anything, so the benefit from a company is that you're not hiring anyone new to do this job, is that you're just moving what they're doing. I know that Jamie's been on a similar experience. Jamie used to work for Apple as well. I've done a number of them in the past, and they really work. So Company doesn't have to pay anything extra. You apply for it like a regular job, so it's not just a selection process. You have to apply, you have to do a number of interviews. But what's really great about it is you have this person that's taken out to look at this problem from a completely different perspective. And because they're given an opportunity, it means that they're super engaged when they go back to their other role. Or they might join that team if they're naturally fitting into that team. So that's something that they're doing really well. Second is a culture of continual improvement. This is not, and I know that Adam mentioned it earlier on, this is not your annual review as a way to go over all of the things that you might have done wrong. This is in the moment, day to day, real feedback. It's called fearless feedback because unlike most feedback, it's not just down. It's not just your manager telling you that you're doing something wrong. It goes across to peers and it goes up to management as well. And that's this model. When it comes to Apple's structure, you can imagine how big it is. The CEO operates on with the same model as your Christmas temp that's working part-time at the Churchill Square store. So embody that feedback element. Finally is a shared vision that's known from top to bottom, and I know that Jamie, again, will go into this in a little bit more detail. But essentially, the VP of retail globally will share every single week via video messages to the team, thanking them, shouting out a store that have done something amazing, or just insights into what the company is working on. And this level of engagement, I'd never seen this before. And I know that it's been mentioned to start doing it, but Apple have been doing this for years. And it really does work. So that's a little bit about me, my background, and some insights that I learned at Apple that I think that you could be doing straight away, particularly the last one. Imagine your CEO, if they're talking to your staff, then great, but are they speaking a language that your employees actually understand? Or is it all jargon and all metrics and KPIs and things like that? Something to think about. I'll hand you over to Jamie.
Thanks, Matt. So you've heard a little bit about Apple, and what I'm hearing a lot today, and what you've heard a lot, is values, values, values. Values here, values there. What do your actual values mean? And I'm going to show you how having your values crystal clear in your organization drives performance. And Deloitte do it exceptionally well. So there's 3 things that I picked from Deloitte that I thought you might find useful to take away with you. Firstly, is they know that if they offer their development program and double what they used to, then their employees are likely to stay twice as long. But rather than just doubling the development, one of the things, I'll paint this into a picture for you, one of the things that really shocks me, and this isn't Jamie feeling old. This is when we run our key manager skills program in Deloitte. I'm really shocked at how young the managers actually are. Literally gobsmacked. When Scott and I first started running the program, we were gobsmacked at how young they were. So what Deloitte do is they move the level of responsibility further down the career of their managers. In order to house that, they double the development time that employee gets. But as a Deloitte employee, you work under high pressure over a long period of time. So you have to sustain that pressure. The only way that you can sustain high pressure over a long period of time is if you want to. I'm sure you'd all agree. So what they do is they make sure that their values in the organization absolutely 100% align to the values of the employee. If they don't, you'll have natural fall-off. But the ones that do will give you what's called discretionary performance. So you'll find people giving more time and more effort because their values align with the organization. So that's how they get young managers to take on more work under more pressure over longer periods of time by ensuring that the values are exactly the same. So they've got one eye on what's going on at the moment with their millennials, their younger talent, but the other eye is on the talent that hasn't started coming through the door yet. So that's Generation Z. And I was kicking off their apprenticeship program over in Windsor last month. So I want to paint a scene for you. A room, I'd say 2-3 times bigger than this. And you've got just short of 300 17 to 19-year-olds. in the first 5 minutes of the first day of their professional career. What do you think they're all doing in order to make themselves feel comfortable right in that moment? Yeah, they all walk in like this, texting, using their phones. I don't think some of their phones were even unlocked. They were so nervous. So what's the first thing that Deloitte did? What's the first thing we teach them? Sorry?
Took them away. No.
Took them away? Nope. Anybody else? Message them? Not quite. They were messaging them previously, they're utilising that. But they decided the first thing that would happen on their first hour of their day would be to learn relationship skills. So I was teaching them how to network. The first thing that happened, welcome to your new job, here's how you network. Here's how you build your future. Because you're not going to build it in here when you've got generations above you walking around that aren't matching that behaviour. So I absolutely love what we've been hearing today about communicating externally, internally, how that should be the same. But when you've got mixed generations in an organisation that's so huge and a new generation walking in, then it's really important that they understand the value of face-to-face communication, of building relationships, taking an interest. During the break at that session, I had a young man come up to me called Callum, and he'd gone over to the managing partner of Deloitte Tax, and I can't remember the department it was. And he went over to him and he said, hello. He said, may I join you? And they were senior partners all having a chat. And he went, can I join you? And he followed the model that I taught him exactly. He said, what is it you're talking about? And I was so made up that this kid had gone out there and thought, do you know what, I'm going to put this into practice. So Deloitte have an eye on what's going on now, but also what's going on in the future. So I just want you to have a think about, are you prepared for the talent that you haven't yet seen, as well as looking at the talent that we've got in the organisation at the moment. I did say that I was going to share 5 things with you, so get your pens and your pads, because these 5 ideas or 5 methods that I'm sharing, I've extracted from our Managing Millennials programme. And these are the things that you're going to be able to put into practice when you go back into your workplace. And I'm just going to echo the message that you've been getting all day. Does all this stuff that I'm going to share with you work for everybody? Yes. Is it rocket science? No. But if you're not doing this and you're doing it the traditional way, will that still work? No. Firstly, encourage millennials and your workforce to be successful at one thing first. And I'll give you an example. When Matt joined our organisation, when he joined the Skills Farm, we gave him a project that I knew he would sink his teeth into straight away. When he started working on our social media stuff, now, had it not been something that had lit his fire, he'd have done the job. He'd have got it done. He'd have been, performing. But because it was something that he really could make his mark on when he first joined, it built confidence. It also allowed what we were calling earlier that discretional performance. So I start getting messages from Matt at like 10:30 at night saying, will you just review this video for me? And I'm thinking, wow, I've got a member of staff that works at 10:30 at night. Very rarely gets a response. But that's when you start to see the discretional performance. So helping your new talent really master something within their role first. I'm not saying let's start cherry-picking jobs, but what of their role can they look at and really make a mark on? And then once they've done that, they can start building the respect that they're looking for in order to start picking and choosing. Does that make sense? Secondly, and this might seem a little bit basic, but we're talking about external and internal communications being the same. Our clients tell us that they need this more than any of the other 5 points within this deck. And it's because millennials are really, you've never seen multitaskers like it because of the technology that they've been brought up in. Generation Z, even more multitaskers. It's phenomenal to see. But multitasking is efficiency. Efficiency is speed. Speed means mistakes. And Matt said you should share a story, and I'll share it very quickly because I'm conscious of the time. But we're trying to engage another social media company at the moment. And a lovely young lady, but when she sends me her email, sometimes there's a word missing. And she's going to be managing my external communications. So we rely too heavily on spell check. It won't tell you if there's a word missing. It won't tell you if it's grammatically incorrect. And what we see in organizations is not just the impact that it's having on the individual. They're lazy, they're sloppy, they don't have any attention to detail. But that's just to them as the individual. But what about the department they're going to be working in? What about the organization? What about your brand, your reputation? And ultimately, what about your bottom line? So encourage them to invest their time in slowing down and learning how to write and consider the impact that what they're writing is going to have at the other end. Because that's where we seem to fail to see. Is what I'm sending out now, whether it be an email or a letter to a client or internally, what's going to happen as a result of me writing it the way I've written it? And there's some great things out there, some great solutions, like slowing down, but also things like Grammarly, things that really help people see that what they've written in that paragraph doesn't make grammatical sense. Thirdly, encourage your younger workforce to arrive at meetings early. Sorry, am I? Oh, no, I'm not blocking the slides. To arrive at meetings early. Now, this isn't about discouraging them to be late. So arriving at meetings early in order to network. So who arrives to a meeting early? The person that's hosting the meeting, usually, to prepare. So if you can encourage your younger workforce, and I encourage you to do this yourself if you're wanting to make yourself more visible, is to arrive at a meeting 10 minutes early and get talking to them and get sharing of the success that you've had on a project that you've been working on recently. And how would this be useful elsewhere in the organization? Is it something I can share? Is it something I can make a video on and share for you? Would that be useful, Mr. CEO? The opportunities that will come from interactions like that will be tenfold. So I was telling these young guys and girls at the apprenticeship launch at Deloitte to turn up at meetings early, and I could see somebody at the back going, don't tell them that. You've got 300 people turning up at meetings early, it's going to be a bit of a problem. But you get my point. And then this isn't about Power Rangers for the people, the Power Rangers fans up in the audience, or dressing up, sadly. But this is about creating a collective wow, a collective way of working. So we've talked about how different generations view younger generations. It was, Adam, I want to reflect Adam's point about, I was told that I was entitled, but I was also told this is the way it is. Either buck up or shut up. But it's not like that anymore. Because the young guys have got all the ideas, all the understanding of technology. So a quick way to integrate cross-generationally is a working wow. So it's your way of working as a team. It's your contract. And I did this the week before last at the Bank of England. And what you do is, first of all, if you like facilitating, get the group together, work out what it is that isn't working. So we're not communicating, we're not profitable, we're not, whatever it is your problem is, work out what the benefits would be. They work it out. Then next, work out what's stopping us. Why can't we do it? And you'll hear things like, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough resources. We don't have enough time, we don't have enough resources, we don't have the energy. We don't have the right space. You'll hear a lot of blockers as to why whatever it is you're trying to achieve can't happen. And then the third step is to work out what the enablers are. So you ask your group, okay, if that's what you can't do, what can you do? Well, do you know what? We could actually hot desk. Or we could say what we want to come out of that communication that comes out on a Friday. Or we'd like to hear a message from our CEO every week. And you'll start getting a really rich understanding of what it is your teams, regardless of their age, are really looking for in order to make themselves happier, more engaged, and ultimately more successful and more profitable as an organization. At the Bank of England, I really knew that we'd got this right when I think it was the head of department came over to me and she said, none of this that's on here, huge list of what the team wanted, is rocket science. She said, but I can't believe I've not heard it. We'd not asked. Now, why is a contract or a wow important? Because when it goes wrong, when the pressure's on or the wheels fall off, you and your team can revisit that and say, look, this is how we agreed to work together. And then lastly, I was speaking to a lady earlier on out in the bar about your values. We've heard values, values, values. Excuse me. Creating line of sight. John F. Kennedy went to visit NASA, and he was on a tour around NASA. Some of you may have heard this story. And while he was going around NASA, he stopped at one of the janitors, and he said, "What do you do here?" And the janitor put his mop against the wall, and he said, "Mr. President, I helped put man on the moon." So that employee clearly understood that what he did made the place clean and safe so the astronauts could safely get to the moon. That's how line of sight works. So I want to ask you, in your organization, do your employees clearly understand where you're heading? Because if they don't, what you've got is a load of employees with searchlights all going off in different directions. And it's really important to younger generation to know where you're heading. And when Matt and I got talking about him coming to work for us, we met in a restaurant in South London. Scott and I rocked up, ready to interview him. And we sat down, and Matt said, "So, where is it you're going? What do you stand for?" We went, "What?" And he said, "What do you stand for? What is it you're achieving at the Skills Farm? What is it you're wanting to do? What's your vision?" And suddenly I realised I was being interviewed. That isn't just me. This happens across the board. So your line of sight is really important. And I'll tell you the 3 reasons, and I want to leave you with this. Creating your line of sight is really powerful. Sharing where your company is going is because if it isn't, when you're trying to attract talent, they won't engage with it. If it's not clear, nah. Secondly, if your interviewers, if your recruiters can't describe your line of sight, your company's goals with crystal clarity, then you'll start losing people. In your organization, if your people don't know where you're heading, they don't know the direction you're going in, you're not going to get any discretional performance. People won't go above and beyond. So ensuring you've got a clear line of sight created and shared within your organization and communicated and communicated and communicated over and over again, and ensure that all your employees are heading in the same direction. So those are the 5 things that I wanted to share with you. Let me just recap. We've got encouraging success at one thing first. Help them find something in their role that's really going to set their fire alight and build their confidence. Secondly, invest in business writing skills. I'm not talking about professional writing skills. Just knocking a quick email out is going to have a different impact than if you slow down and consider the impact. Teaching them to arrive early for meetings, creating that environment for them to network and share what they're successful at, what they're good at. Create a team charter, something you can revisit, something that makes the team accountable. Integrating cross-generationally. And then finally, sharing your line of sight. Creating it and sharing it. It's been a real pleasure to hear everybody today, but it's also been a real pleasure to share what we know with you. So thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm just going to leave you with one thought, if I may. This is our manifesto. If I can draw your attention to the final 2 lines, those who like comfort zones should stay there, hail the ones who want to step up, speak up, and stand out. I don't like my comfort zone. I'm not in my comfort zone standing in front of you right now, but I was given the opportunity to do it because I want to step up, I want to speak up, and I want to stand out. So hopefully the whole of today has given you tools and some insight into ways that you can do that for your millennials as well. Thank you very much.